A little introduction for Opening the Gate for anyone new here. Opening the Gate is a joint initiative between Aldi and the Prince's Countryside Fund, designed to help young people and new entrants enter and succeed in the agricultural industry. It's a series of webinars, with the first 3 exploring the theme of work experience, education, employment, and networks. This session is our second one. Our first one was aimed at school students, and we had brilliant speakers on university, college, and apprenticeships. But tonight's session is aimed at current students, recent graduates, and university alumni. So we're delighted to have lots of you here tonight. Hopefully most of you fit into those categories, and we'll have a really interesting and informative evening for you. In addition to these workshops though, all of you will have access to an online bank of resources that can be accessed by anyone at any time for free via the PCF website. These sessions are also recorded, so if you can't catch the whole session, or if you have friends who want to get involved, they can catch up at any time. A little bit about me. My name's Ed Dungate. I'm an arable farmer from Northumberland. I have been well involved with young farmers for the last 10 years. I've spent the last 12 months as the national chairman of YFC across England and Wales. But they finally gave me the boot from the job 2 weeks ago as I finished my role. So I'm a bit of a has-been in YFC now, a bit of a nobody, but I'm delighted that Aldi and PCF invited me to chair these sessions, and it was a real honour. So I'm delighted to be here for these 3 sessions. I am an arable farmer in partnership with my mum and dad in Northumberland. It's been pouring with rain here all day today. I've spent most of my day unblocking gutters and drains. Thankfully, I have no sheep, so it's not affecting any lambing for me. But I do have lots of spring crops to get in the ground, and I can't get anywhere near my fields at the minute. I obviously went to school. Lots of people tried to persuade me to go into a more sort of academic job when I left school. So I thought about doing veterinary or engineering until I realized that this is bonkers. What I really love is agriculture. And I realized that agriculture is a high-tech industry. We're really forward-thinking, we are innovative, and there's so much opportunity in agriculture that a lot of people don't necessarily realize. So I'm delighted. I decided to go to Harper Adams and I studied agriculture. Had a brilliant time doing my degree there. I did a placement year in Wiltshire for 1 year on a huge arable farm. Didn't necessarily enjoy my time there, but it was a fantastic experience. I'm so glad I went there and I learned so much. And then I've come back, fortunately, to my family farm. But that's enough about me. So this session is all about maximizing career opportunities. We have 3 brilliant speakers here for you today, Nick, Chloe, and Imogen, here to talk to you about a broad range of areas to work in the industry. A bit of housekeeping, we are recording this session. Please keep microphones on mute. Questions from all of our audience participants are welcome. Please use the question box. And there is a £50 voucher donated by Aldi for the best question asked tonight. We will have 2 polls today, one which at the beginning and one at the end. You should all see an opening poll there. So if everyone can please quickly fill that in to give us an idea of what sort of knowledge we've got in the audience tonight. And without further ado, I'll pass over to our first speaker. So an introduction, Nick Davies is the Group Agriculture Director at one of Britain's largest food producers, Two Sisters Food Group. He has a wealth of experience and respect in the agri-food sector from farm to retail, food service, restaurant and export, covering beef, lamb, pork and now chicken, where he plays a pivotal role in the processing of over 7 million chickens every week. Nick wasn't fortunate to be from a farming background, but didn't let that stop him wanting to be a producer of healthy, nutritious, great welfare food. Two Sisters Food Group have said, we are looking for skill sets outside of the traditional ways, which has never been so important to recruit. Keeping our people excited in the roles they hold, succession and retention, as well as progression, is at the heart of what we do. So I shall hand over to Nick.
Thanks, Ed. It's always weird to hear about yourself in that way, but thanks for the great introduction, and thanks to Aldi and the Princess Countryside Fund for asking me to join tonight. Many other people could have been done, so I feel quite privileged and also honoured to be able to share some of my experiences. And an introduction to myself is that, yes, okay, I'm the Group Agricultural Director for one of the largest food producing businesses in the UK and in Europe, but ultimately the reason I do it is because I love it. I love the challenge, I love the variability, I love the uncertainty, and I love the challenge. And I think that sums me up. I'm probably a bit of an adrenaline junkie, that whilst my challenges are no different to somebody operating on one site in the UK, and we operate over 7 in respect of primary processing, I just have 7 headaches some days more than anybody else. And that's how I sort of almost departmentalize it, in the fact of, it's just such a big business. For myself, I've had a absolutely privileged career so far, but also, outside of work. And I think that's the real key, is making sure you actually have a work-life balance. And look, I don't always get it right. So for me sitting here today, I'd probably be a bit of a hypocrite to say I have it right, and I don't. And it's something that actually within our career that you really do need to work on, is making sure that you have that respite, and making sure you can get away, and actually not feeling guilty about that. But I enjoy the usual things, from taking my daughters horse riding to country pursuits, and I still indulge in a bit of lambing and ploughing, and God knows what else I do to just keep my foot to the ground and keep it grassroots level. I've been absolutely privileged that I've had people who believe in me through my career. Like I said, Ed introduced me. I wasn't privileged to be brought up in a farming family, and but also that didn't stop me. And I was determined at the age of 16 to go into a career where Saturday jobs working on a pig farm which had arable, and I used to spend the harvest lugging straw, driving tractors, getting on the plough, mucking pigs out, and just being embroiled in the whole day-to-day activity of a family farm. And it really made me feel like I was part of one of the families. When I always wanted to make sure that I was wanted a career in agriculture, but I wasn't always sure. My career path from school said I needed to be an agronomist, and that was far from what I wanted to do. But I knew it had to be something to do with food. Like I say, absolutely privileged. When I left school, I had somebody who took a leap of faith in me. I didn't have any college background, any qualifications other than a good set of GCSEs. But it soon became apparent that doing beef, lamb, pork and arable on a farm, that I wanted to get some qualifications. So I actually put myself through a modern apprenticeship scheme, as well as working full time, and eventually running between 8,500 to 10,000 sheep. We had 1,000 head of suckler cows on the farm, which was managed there as well. So a big enterprise. But again, I had somebody who actually believed in me and believed in what skills I did have. But also in my mindset, it always played that I was actually an imposter syndrome, that why would somebody employ me? Why did they have their faith in me? But actually, when you start going through your career path, you sort of start understanding what those skill sets are and why people believe in you. Always wanted to experience the food chain. So throughout my career, I left practical farming after being shortlisted for some awards in the farming calendar, which is Farmers Weekly Awards. Didn't actually win either of them, but people think I did, so I'll take the privilege of those who think I did win it. And left it and ran Farmer Should, British Beef and Lamb, Global Gap, which is accredited schemes for assurance globally, as well as the local red tractor schemes for beef and lamb. And then just in conversations managed to land a job working for a processor as an agricultural manager, and doing primarily beef and lamb and then pork. And I had the opportunity to go into retail, so I took it with the cooperative, and that was an unbelievable journey. I managed to travel the world, look at different experience around supply chain approvals, look at how to manage customers, look how to manage government regulations, and how to actually develop people skills. But also, again, in the back of my mind, there was always this noise which was saying, how are you doing what you're doing? You haven't got the background, and why you? But I think that was my grit and determination to prove that actually a career in agriculture didn't just have to mean that I was going out on the farm looking after the beef and sheep, and that there was so much more to agriculture if you wanted to step out of that space. Food production really excited me. And I think what excited me was actually getting to know the regulation piece, the actual real practical farm piece, so how that regulation impacted on the farming side, but also actually understanding the consumer. And I always have this belief is that you look at things in the round. So on top of that, sustainability became really, really important. And I actually left the co-op to actually join AB Agri and AB Sustain, which actually then led me to be able to understand one of the largest carbon footprints, which is one of the largest carbon footprints for farming across all species at its time. And again, that led to dealing with hundreds and hundreds of different species, and dealing with data, dealing with farmers, dealing with a huge amount of assessors that were going out onto farm. But that was a steep learning curve, how to plan, how to react, how to actually excite the customer, how to keep people on board when times were difficult. And leaving that role, I went into pork with the Karro Food Group, and again, it gave me another insight into another species, into an export business that actually was so successful with a brand. And again, that led me to deal with international guests. And when I left Karro, I wasn't actually really sure that I actually wanted a senior role as a director of one of the largest food groups. And I can remember having my conversation, an interview with the CEO and the president and owner of the business, and said, why do you want to come and work for us? And I was, I'm not sure that I do, because I don't really understand your business. You don't understand me. And in the conversation, actually working for an entrepreneur, again, really fits with my sort of ability to be an adrenaline junkie and get the support to believe in new ideas, fresh approaches. And I think that's something which is absolutely essential in realizing a career in agriculture is not always going to be the highs. There are challenges, the ability to be agile, the ability to be flexible, think outside the box, deal with crisis, deal with excitement, deal with reward, but also deal with pushback. But I think when you actually look at my career, what I've had to date, and you look at the reasons, some of the things that I would look back at and say, what would make me, looking back, desirable, actually tailoring CVs to the job and actually seeing how you can sell yourself, really looking at the criteria of the business, whether it's a business needs that you see on a website, whether it's sustainability goals, whether it's targets through welfare that you can see that business is committing at. How can you help them deliver beyond what they've got? How can you bring new ideas to make sure that business has a point of difference that it can deliver to its customers? And that's fundamentally what's really, really important. And actually not being frightened to actually say beyond what's actually being asked for, what you can deliver, what your career aspirations are, and being really, really clear and concise in the way that you actually deliver that, and never be frightened of actually underselling yourself, overselling yourself, and then what your aspirations are and how you believe you can deliver for a business. And I think that whilst I'm absolutely clear that whilst I didn't go to university, I've always tried to upskill myself through training, through new career opportunity development, and actually listening, because I always remember one of my old bosses always say, as you go through your career path, just remember that person who may well you report to, or you might be working alongside, could be your boss one day. So ultimately, respect is ultimately, for me, is really, really important. And that has actually happened. Somebody who was actually higher than me has actually come into somebody who actually reports. And it's really interesting when you go back on the stories of that journey with each other. Ultimately, what am I looking for? We have graduate programs from engineering through to finance, through to technical, through to agriculture. We have a multitude of placements within our own business. And what excites me is when somebody comes in and wants to try something new, hasn't maybe even done it, but seems to have the mindset to be able to apply themselves, whether it's hand butchery skills, whether it's an engineering job, and looking how you can apply those practical, applicable skills across a multitude of disciplines is really exciting. And I think willingness to give it a go, and actually not being frightened of actually saying, I don't think I understand it, I'm not sure this is the right career path, and actually being able to sit down clearly and concisely and being able to explain that. And also, I think that when we've had people come to a job interview, really being able to clearly, honestly feedback as to sometimes why people haven't succeeded is really important to me, to say, these are the things that I can offer back to you as why you didn't succeed in this time. Maybe you look at this, this, and this. And that's been one of the real steep learning curves for me, is that, when you do the detail, how do you clearly, concisely deliver a package to a CEO, to a president, when they've got, very limited time to understand stuff, and you need to get a point across. And that's sometimes where, being clear and concise in your career path on what you want. I've actually had a CV which actually detailed, I think it was something like 36 different tractors that an individual actually drove once, and wasn't quite sure that that was the best CV I actually said, but it was certainly the most humorous one. So I think, again, just look at how you present your CVs, look how you present yourself, and be bold and be confident, because ultimately for myself, I think I'm absolutely privileged. I've had some real knockbacks in my career where I've sat at some pretty significant farming conferences, and somebody sat down beside me and said, where did you come from? And when I said, they got up and walked off. I'm no different to anyone else. I've got a job to do, and I'm really proud at the journey that I've come on, because, like I say, you will get knocked back, but pick yourself up, learn from why and how, what knocked you back, and then learn from it, and don't make the same mistake twice. I actually have probably made the same mistake more than once, but that's probably a bit of a steeper learning curve. So look, I think that the opportunities are immense. Technology, data, engineering, we're using so much technology now that maybe the skill sets which are needed around engineering used to be a hammer and a pole. Now around technology, picking pieces of meat, looking at camera technology in sheds, virtual reality, which we're using, looking at cameras that can weigh birds. It's a seriously exciting career to get into. Work-life balance on our poultry farms are far different than you could imagine, where you do get time to have a better work-life balance. Hard work in the cycles, but a really good opportunity. So I think that in the spirit of keeping time, Ed, and not having to scratch your ear, I think that that's nearly the time that I was allotted. So yeah, hopefully that's given you some really good inspiration into coming on board with agriculture.
Thanks so much, Nick. Really interesting, quick chat there. Quite inspiring, I thought, for me too. Particularly the points, always listen and respect everyone you're working with, because they may well be a boss one day. But also that whatever your situation is now, whatever your background is, the opportunities in agriculture are so great. Nick is clearly a great example of how far and how successful you can be, even if you haven't come from an agricultural background at all. We'll now move on to our second speaker, Chloe Cross. Chloe works for Kite as an agricultural consultant, as well as running her own farming business. Chloe graduated from Harper Adams in 2014, which happens to be the same year that I did. So I have enjoyed a few lectures and potentially a few drinks with Chloe in the past, many years ago. She got an honours degree in agriculture with farm business management before working full-time as a herd manager on a robotic unit in Staffordshire and relief milking for a conventional herd. Her main interests lie in heifer rearing and farm efficiencies. Chloe has worked with PCF for a number of years, delivering workshops and coordinating groups as part of PCF's Farm Resilience Programme. She is now based in Suffolk and works across East Anglia and the South East. So welcome, Chloe.
Thanks very much, Ed. Good to see you. I can see there's quite a few people on the call, so thanks all for having me. What you'll notice, I'm going to do a short presentation, but you'll notice many of the same sort of anecdotes and ultimately the same themes across my presentation as Nick's. And I hope that is enjoyable rather than repetitive, but we will see how that goes. So I'm going to share my screen and hope, Ed, can you give me a thumbs up if that's come through? Ideal. Okay, cool. So not that I needed this intro because Ed's done a almost perfect job, so thank you for that. Just a couple of things really. I started with a foundation degree before I topped up to the full honours degree, and in doing that, well, I namely was joined on the foundation degree at Harper Adams because I was not from a farming background, and I never felt compromised for doing that. In fact, it was a choice for me to take the foundation degree. I felt like my experience in agriculture was next to none. So looking at where I am now, I'm particularly proud of, first of all, my love for agriculture, bearing in mind it wasn't in my day-to-day conversation growing up. And second of all, in the career that I've got with Kite, I think we can all be proud of something sometimes, and this might just be that for me. So yeah, I joined Kite in 2017. I'm going to have a quick conversation with you now about what that's looked like for me. So the original plan when I went to Harper as a foundation degree agriculture student was to be on farm every day, ultimately labouring. And I did do that in all of my weekends. I worked on the Harper farm, and all of the seasonal breaks that we were gifted from the university in terms of the Easter, summer and Christmas breaks. I would find myself traveling across the country in order to work for different people. I didn't actually start looking at dairy until my third year of agriculture. I was very much arable focused and did my placement year on a fresh produce farm in East Anglia. So moving back to livestock was, I suppose it sort of came from my love for lambing, that I'd spent a huge amount of time in the Scottish borders lambing for 5 consecutive years, probably not too far away from Ed's hometown. And then I did some time lambing in Wales as well as the southeast of England. So moving to dairy was drawing on my love for livestock during lambing season. But hands up, admittedly, I'd never spent, other than my placement year at Harper Adams, I'd never spent a full year working on farm because I'd gone through the conventional route of school and sixth form and university. So a full year in agriculture was something I was missing. So given the opportunity to take on a herdsperson's job in Staffordshire was, I really feel, a leap of faith for my employer at the time. It was a very small family farm, 140 cows on 2 robots, but they kept all of the black and white bulls and finished them as young bull beef as well. And I was paid poorly, truth be told, so I took a relief milking job alongside. I milked on 3 times a day units at the same time, exhausting myself, but massively building my experience in the meantime. I didn't seek then, this is me on farm, I didn't seek then at that point to join consultancy. I actually applied for a job as a herd manager, or assistant herd manager, sorry, on a larger farm in Cheshire. And it just so happened that Kite were running the interview for that position. And during my interview for the position for assistant herdsperson, I mentioned that my long-term goal, looked like some consultancy work. It was a massive surprise to me at that point that at the age of 23, 24 perhaps, that Kite wanted to talk to me about joining a career with them at that stage. So I was massively out of my depth. I knew that consultancy was something I wanted to look at later, but I kind of thought that I'd be doing it in my 30s, maybe 40s. I didn't know really what consultancy was. I certainly didn't know what consultancy meant for a dairy farm. So I went into my interview almost entirely blind. My interview was a 3-step process. I had a face-to-face interview where I'd prepared a vision about what the dairy industry looked like, funnily enough, at that point in 2020. So it was just a 5-year sort of review about where we might be. And we discussed some of the horizon planning that was on the cards for the dairy industry. I did feel disadvantaged in that conversation because I wasn't able to draw upon technology maybe that I'd seen or heard of from sales reps for my whole life. I was simply drawing on the robotic experience that I'd gained over the last couple of years, and drawing again on the people that I'd worked for, whilst not necessarily all dairy farmers. Certainly you come across a great mix of personalities when you work for farmers in general. So it gave me a really good insight into how people felt about, losing BPS, about changing legislation and the so-called red tape. So I felt like I could have conversations in that department just on what I'd learned from who I'd spoken to at that stage. I did, however, whilst I wasn't a particular expert in dairy at the time, I did, however, have a lot of experience working across the country. And because I'm a personable person, I've gone out of my way to stay in touch with my employers, probably since I was about 14 or 15. I'd still send Christmas cards to people that I've worked for, still pick up the phone when I'm on long journeys now. And I think in terms of one of the skills that Kite saw in me in these really early days, knowing that I didn't have a clue how to formulate a ration, knowing that I didn't know how to, create a 5-year business plan, they could see that I was actually good with people. And in, a sort of secondary benefit to that characteristic, I suppose, is that it's kept the door open for other jobs. Even now to this date, people still ask me what I'm up to, if I'm looking to move on. It has been important for me personally to be personable. It's maybe no surprise, I'm quite energetic, quite enthusiastic, and really willing to learn. I've been a massive advocate for CPD, for continuing to improve my own knowledge, my own skill set, and I've taken opportunities to go abroad to work with farmers in a slightly different way of consulting than some of my colleagues would do. And the point of that is that I am always conscious that I haven't grown up on farm, and whilst I don't see it as a disadvantage, I don't want anybody else to see it as a disadvantage either. So I think, I'll talk a little bit more about how I've put that into practice. There's a picture of me that Ed would remember me of about 12 years ago at Harper, but this is just a little bit about some of the opportunities that have been given to me, if you like, or that I've approached since graduating. I've done a course with University of Wisconsin. I work with milk buyers and retailers across the country, and the Princess Countryside Fund, of course. And I've upskilled myself in terms of practical application as well, foot trimming courses, mobility courses, AI courses. And whilst I'm not using those skills on farm to actually inseminate cows or to actually foot trim cows, it does then give me the conversational point of understanding for long-term relationship building with both my clients, and also as that relaying person between milk buyers and retailers. Milk buyers and retailers don't necessarily have any experience on farm, so they look for a middleman in terms of a consultant to communicate that between farmer and milk buyer. And that's been a part of my job that I didn't see as a big selling point to Kite earlier, and now it's one of my favourite elements of my job. So what I expected when I looked at consultancy, I expected a client portfolio of 40 clients. I expected to see 2 clients each day, 5 days a week. I expected those client visits to be sort of 3 to 4 hours of a technical review, followed by a business review for cash flow planning, for profit and loss planning. And I expected pretty much every month of my calendar to look the same, with the underlying focus of the cow at the heart of every conversation. The truth of the matter is that I'm a family relationship guidance counsellor. I'm a confidant and I'm a friend. I don't have the answers to everything. I'm 30 years old, funny enough, I don't know everything. And my farmers don't expect me to, but they do expect me to find out, and they do expect me to ask the right people in order to fill the gap on what we're discussing. I've learned that no two businesses are the same, and that one piece of advice appropriate for farmer A is not appropriate for farmer B. And reviewing their resources, their access to cash, their labour, their land, doing a fundamental review of that business sets the tone for what appropriate advice that farmer then looks for. Long-term relationships with both clients, with milk buyers and with retailers. I was maybe, I thought perhaps that I'd go in and 6 months into working with Kite, I'd have this full portfolio of clients. The truth of the matter is I'm 6 years in, and a farmer that I spoke to 4 years ago might have just picked up the phone to me last week. And it's all about a long-term game, long-term relationships, and being personable and keeping the door open. Some of my most rewarding work has been in discussion groups and travel. I now look after 6 retailers and milk buyers next generation discussion groups with 30-something people in each discussion group. And that really gives me great insight into not only different systems within dairy, but different people's family circumstances, succession planning, how people approach borrowing money, how people approach repaying money. So there's been a huge amount that I've learned just by being in group discussions. And if I were to advise people either coming out of university or education and moving into employment, or looking at your next step in employment, it would definitely be to engage in as many discussion groups as possible. So life as a consultant then, there's no minutiae to consultancy. It's not about working with a cow, it's about working with people. Ambition and goals of those people, as well as the ambition and goals that I set for myself, are really important in order to drive both my own career and the careers of the farmers that I'm working with. Everything is about profit. If you're not making money, then ultimately you've got more choices. So I make a real point of profit being a key element of the consultancy that I do. Detail and direction then sort of filter into that ambition and goal, profit driven element of farming. Travel brings fantastic opportunities and fantastic people, and like I said, you need that balance between good people and good work outcomes. So some of the challenges next that we've got coming up and that I think are going to be really important for the next generation of consultants applying for work on farm and work with consultancy businesses. This isn't necessarily for the UK dairy industry, but probably agriculture as a whole. We're at a critical point of change with some really exciting but quite scary times ahead of us. We've got massive growth for agriculture in the UK. And I think that some of that growth comes in shifting a broad brush spectrum of advice to tailored advisory services, and ultimately, not thinking that one system can fit all, working with people's resources, like I said. Some of the challenges that we've got, the climate, we've got to be maximising land, we've got sustainability focus, environmental responsibilities and legislation as well, minutes away around the corner. Our technology potential, learning that, understanding that and applying that on farm, as well as working with an ever-changing labour workforce and recruiting for that and the challenges that that brings. Okay, so I mean, I'm almost on time, Ed. That was a real whistle-stop tour, but I hope there were some interesting pieces of information in there.
That was fantastic, Chloe. Thank you so much. See what you've achieved in a very short space of time. Since leaving university, you've thrown yourself at every opportunity, and it sounds like you're still really enjoying it. So we'll move on to some questions just for our first couple of speakers. So one really interesting one, which I wanted to ask myself too. Neither of you come directly from an agricultural background. And do you think this is a help or a hindrance to you on the whole? We'll go to Nick first.
I don't think it's a hindrance, and I suppose maybe being slightly controversial, I'm not sure sometimes it's helpful. So I suppose I could just leave it there, couldn't I, not answer the question? No, I won't. What I mean by that is that I think if you have the ability to listen, learn, and absorb, then as long as, you know, somebody has once said to me, well, I've been farming for 30 years. It's like absolutely fantastic, and I respect you for that. But sometimes, and I mean this respectfully, it doesn't mean to say it's been done right for the last 30 years. And I think that our ability to respectfully, and I go back to my piece around respect, being able to almost, like for me, you know, I'm sometimes a generalist because I cover so many different aspects of farming. But what I'll always try to do is trying to adapt the situation and say, well, what about this? Have you thought about this? Could we look at this? So I think that actually somebody who maybe hasn't come from the farming background, hasn't got that, let's say, that knowledge of the history or almost the opinion and sometimes of, you know, that farming entity to, you know, to almost impress that on them. So you don't end up with another 30 years of maybe the same. So I think that, you know, for me, it is both positive and negative, but the main thing is, and I think that Chloe summed it up really, really well, is that you listen, you learn, and you respect, and you inform and fill those gaps. And I think as long as people want and are able to adapt, I don't think there's a right or wrong, you know, whether you're from farming or not.
Yeah, completely agree, actually, Nick. A help and a hindrance at the same time. Ultimately, if you've got the right sort of character to deliver that sort of listening element, then it doesn't matter either way. But one thing I am pleased about not coming from agriculture is that I get to ask why. Why have you done it like that? And I think farmers being farmers accept farming a lot of the time. And actually, if I've sort of said, well, but just talk me through your rationale, or, you know, why is it you've been doing that for the last 15 years without seeing a result that you're particularly interested in? I don't need to, I've often said to people, I'm walking away at the end of this conversation, so I've got nothing to lose. It's all about you, and I'm asking questions to help you. So I don't feel the embarrassment of asking why, whether if I had you know, a pre-written canvas of farming growing up, I maybe wouldn't find it so easy to ask why.
Brilliant answers. We, I think, are in an incredibly competitive industry, whether that be someone starting out and just trying to access a bit more land, or whether that be in the sort of jobs that you're in. You guys have obviously succeeded, but not everybody can. Have you found a lot of competition, and have you found it easy access, you know, getting to where you want to be in the industry?
Competition is tough. Am I right to chat first, Nick? Is that okay? Competition is tough for sure, especially when the industry is already quite narrow. And like you said, if you've got competitors sort of trying to chip in every which direction, what I would suggest is know your strengths and play to your strengths. I'm not a strong nutritionist, so I don't try to be a strong nutritionist, but I am very good at cash flow planning and I am very good at budgets. So I know that long-term strategic business planning is something that I can deliver because of my ability to look at a horizon of a business, whether, you know, the smaller nitty-gritty information of a business with rations is something that I'd like to leave to somebody else. And actually, because I recognize that that's neither a strength of my own nor a particularly strong interest, I therefore remove myself from the competition and create competition in something that I am good at, that I am strong in. In terms of the competition of applying for jobs and of, you know, sort of getting over that first hurdle, all comes down to that first sort of, you know, conversation that you're having. If you don't know the answer, don't try and tell them that you do have the answer. Be very candid about the situation and enjoy the fact that you're showing your personality traits off to somebody who's investing in your personality traits. You can learn something later on the job through some Zooms, through a course. You can't learn to listen, you can't learn to apply yourself, and you can't learn to be interested if you haven't worked on those elements yourself first.
Yeah, I'd echo all of that. And also, I think that really use what's available to you, to your strength. Use LinkedIn, use social media, you know, really sell yourself. And what I always remember is the contacts that I actually made when I actually first left school. You know, one of them is now head of agriculture for a retailer, and I actually knew that individual when I was actually still knee deep in mud and lambing this time of year, and going back, and you know, I chaired the National Sheep Association region for my area for a number of years, and those people are still the people I have contacts which are now influencing, whether it be at retail, export. And that network of people was absolutely instrumental in getting me where I've got to. Believe me, you know, being able to pick up the phone at whatever hour of the day. You know, I've got a great people, many people will know a gentleman who has been, you know, quite active in, well, very active in NFU. And I don't mind saying it, is now a gentleman called Andrew Blenkiron, has been absolutely, you know, somebody I could go to as a sounding block, and he, you know, and he would give me sound advice. But that network, building your reputation is everything, you know, having that level of respect to listen, even if you don't agree with that person, but just going back to those individuals and just knowing who to ask, going back to what Chloe said, don't be ashamed of not knowing, because, you know, I even still say, no, sorry, whoever it is on the call, don't know that. I'm going to get back to you in the next hour or so. You know, but, you know, integrity and honesty and transparency for me is where I've got to with my role. So, yeah.
Brilliant. You two come across to me like you'd be successful in whatever industry you decided to go into. So what do you like most about working in agriculture? You clearly, you've both mentioned that you have to be people persons, and you're dealing with a lot of farmers all the time. Do you still enjoy that all the time? And what do you like most about the industry?
For me, like I said before, I had an opening thing. I think I've actually got something wrong with me, which is a bit of an adrenaline junkie, where I seem to, whilst I'll moan about it, because I do, you know, it's like, but it seems like you thrive on that next challenge. And I think that's really important, that you actually still need to enjoy what you do. And I think that don't always think it's going to be perfect. And it's knowing when it's not perfect to realize what's important, you know, and actually listening and getting honest feedback from people around you, knowing, going back to that network of people, you know, trying to say, well, what do you think of me about what did I do? And actually, do you know what, I've had some pretty hard knocks in my time. So don't believe that sitting here as a director of a large food business is an easy journey, and it's the day-to-day tasks are pretty tough in the food business. But what really excites me is that I produce healthy, wholesome, you know, high welfare product, what I can be proud of and I can stand behind. And we're part of you know, feeding the nation of what is some of the best food produced, you know, globally. But, you know, that's what gets me out of the bed, you know, every morning, is the excitement to be able to do that with integrity. But if you want to have a go and you don't know, just have a go, because that's the point. Get excited about having a go. Sorry, Chloe.
Yeah, I think that you and I cut from the same cloth, Nick. I'm incredibly sad about how excited I get about agriculture. I find it a difficult question to answer, really, Ed, because agriculture being so broad and having dipped my toe in lots of different parts of farming and now consultancy, I'd say the thing that I'm really pleased about working in agriculture is the diversity and the variation itself. And you can go from, you know, we're arable and sheep at home. We've moved from a 3-crop plough-based conventional system to a 9-crop min-till sheep eating regenerative focus, and that's happened in 5 years, and it's been so painstaking and so amazing all at the same time that I now am obsessed with soil. I'm now obsessed with like grazing strategies. I never was interested in grazing before. I was interested in output. I was interested in profit. Now I'm thinking grazing is really cool. Look at the soil health. Look at the depth of this rooting. And you know, you take that in combination with doing a grant application for a client where you've just got £250,000 secured in a grant, and you think, I did that. I helped them get that. And that's all because, you know, we put together a business plan and we have a vision and we're all excited about achieving something long term, and we can communicate it well. So I think getting excited about, or why I'm pleased to work in agriculture, is just, it's huge. I mean, it's everything and it's nothing all at the same time.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Nick and Chloe. We shall move on now to our third and final speaker. So I'd like to welcome Imogen Webb, who I have here. I've lost my introduction, so I'll let her do a fantastic introduction herself. Welcome, Imogen.
Hiya. So I'm Imogen, and I graduated from the Royal Agricultural University, the RAU, in 2021, and I just did straight agriculture. I have a few notes here, if you see me looking to the side. And I'm not from a farming background at all. My parents distribute cardiovascular equipment to the NHS, so completely different. But when I was younger, I got into horses, and I had a bit of a dilemma when I finished my A-levels. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I thought, oh, well, I'll start with that. And they had equine courses at the RAU. And then I did slightly better in my A-levels than I expected. And agriculture it just really sort of, I thought, oh, that looks interesting. I think at that time in my life, I really had a desire to do something important and worthwhile. And I thought that, like, feeding the country, surely that will be exciting and important. So yeah, I went there and studied for 3 years. And then at the end of it, I knew I wanted, again, it's sort of this like desire to prove yourself, and knowing that I wasn't as experienced as my peers, I decided I wanted to do like the groundwork. I didn't want to go, because there are graduate schemes in consultancy and like nutrition and stuff, but I wanted to like prove to myself that like I could do the groundwork and the labor. So I knew I wanted to have sort of like a farm management or something that would lead to farm management, which was quite hard to find, like having not so much experience. But I think like one lesson that I learned is definitely so far is definitely don't sell yourself short. Like that, although it is a competitive market, as you said, there are so many opportunities out there that are right for you, and you shouldn't sell yourself short in anything. So that's something that I'm very grateful for. And I took a whim because I Originally, my parents live in Reading in England, and then I moved to Dundee for this role. So that was in itself a big challenge. And I think this topic is particularly close to my heart because it feels very, very recent still for me. And during these past 2 years, I've definitely done a lot of growing up, and a lot of growing up. And what am I going to say? Just go for it. For my younger self, I would tell myself that you don't need to prove yourself. If you're already pursuing something that nobody in your family has done before, that's already proving yourself, and you should already be so proud of yourself. And when I started working for Karro, it was very hard. It was my first full-time job, and like Chloe said, my first year in agriculture, and it was definitely an adjustment, especially from uni life and being a student. I didn't have a gap year or anything in the meantime, but the nature of my job itself, I found it so encompassing. I could throw myself into it because, as I'm sure you're aware, farming is a lifestyle, and the fact that I could throw myself into it really made me feel secure and like I was making a difference. And the differences that I could make, they showed up in the production and as the results of the farm, relatively quickly. And it was just so rewarding. And then from there, it suddenly became so much easier, and I was really able to throw myself into the industry. So in my current role, I manage a team of 4 people, including myself, and we run a outdoor high welfare, antibiotic free farrow to wean unit of about 650 sows. So it's a lot of work, but you don't even notice the weather. We're all wrapped up. It's so worth it, and it's so rewarding. And I think my innate desire to look after things, it's if you have even an inkling that this might be for you, just go for it. For me, I feel like I have this sort of fear that I'm running out of time, but there is so much time. If you think you might like this, just give it a go. There is so many opportunities, weekend work, I don't know, with sort of milking or whatever. Give it a go, try it out, because it's the best thing I've ever done. And I think everybody should try, because we all need to eat. And yeah, basically, I think I've sort of covered everything that I wanted to say.
Brilliant, thanks, Imogen. I guess a few years ago you wouldn't have seen yourself up in Dundee doing what you're doing now, did you?
No, not at all.
But no regrets, and it just shows that you can get into this industry, and there are so many different career paths and opportunities that you will probably end up somewhere that you never expected you would be.
Yeah, exactly. If you told myself when I applied to uni that I would be running an outdoor pig farm, what? And it's just, I'm so proud of myself, really.
Brilliant. I think one of the key phrases you said there is don't sell yourself short. And as Chloe picked on before as well, if you think that you're not so hot on one area or another, pick on what you are good at, work on what you are good at, and sell yourself in that respect. And there will, there's jobs out there for you.
Yeah, you definitely do have something to bring to the industry. The questions earlier about whether it's a help or a hindrance to be part of it. You always have something, no matter any industry, a young idea and a young voice to someone that's been doing the same thing forever. There's always benefit in that. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Imogen. I'm delighted you went to RAU Cirencester, because we don't want to get too biased yet, and there's so many fantastic universities and colleges out there. So yeah, good to have plenty of variation. Thank you so much, Imogen.
Thank you.
So just to draw tonight's session to a close, thank you. If the final poll should be up now, if everyone can fill that in for us. Thank you very much. Thank you so much to all our participants for 3, I found, incredibly interesting and inspiring speeches there and questions. So thank you so much. Thank you to all of our participants and the brilliant questions you've been asking. Any of the questions we didn't get to, they will be put to our panelists, and we will email out any final answers that we have for them. So look out for them. But there's so many more resources available on the PCF website, the Prince's Countryside Fund. So get yourselves on there. Tell all your mates too who haven't managed to make it tonight. We will be in touch with who has won the £50 voucher donated by Aldi for tonight. So thank you all for participating and asking so many questions. Sorry, we've managed to fit as much as we can into 1 hour, but we won't take up your evenings any longer, because it's the quality of conversation that matters, not the quantity. And I think it's been fantastic quality. So thank you once again to all of our speakers. You guys who are here participating and watching tonight, I know you're the guys who are going to succeed in the agricultural industry, because you've already decided to give up your evening to learn more about the industry, the opportunities available, and you've heard a few of them here tonight, but there's so much opportunity out there in the agricultural world. The food and drink industry is massive. So if you love farming and being out working on a farm, like what I do, fantastic. But you've heard of so many different career routes tonight. So work out what your strengths are, and build on them and sell yourselves. And you never know where you might end up in a few years' time. As has been said tonight, whatever your career route, you are bound to make all sorts of mistakes, but it doesn't matter. As long as you are hardworking and keep an open mind and keep doing your best, you will learn from them and you will improve from them. So whatever barriers you may come across in the industry, don't worry about it. Keep working on it. And think about these 3 and what they've said tonight. So without further ado, thank you very much to everybody. If any of you are still under age 28, I'd encourage you to go along to your local YFC club, because there's so many opportunities there. But obviously that's not why I'm here tonight. So thank you so much to the Prince's Countryside Fund and to Aldi and to all of you. Thank you very much.